Hey Aquarius, I hope that everybody is doing well. What I was seeing in the pre-shuffle is connected with if you've been putting in work, you can end up seeing the results of that in a way that you'd been wanting to. If that's the case, this looks like something that you've been working towards for a while. What this can also indicate too is that there can be more of a focus on you in general, like cultivating what you want. This was feeling to me more so like physical stuff that you have going on. So it can be things related to stuff within 3D that you have going on. It feels like it was more so connected with that. And even though I like imagine very much that this, like, you have an emotional connection to what you're working on and that there is that like link between these things, at the same time it feels like there's a focus on like physically what's manifesting. So maybe your attention is just like drawn towards that right now, or you're becoming like very clear on certain goals that you have, or you're like, certain things that I was seeing is like wanting to be able to enjoy particular things, and whether that be like I need to do this in order for that to happen, or like I want to feel like I'm more self-reliant in some way. That can also be something that's coming up to within the energy, or it can just be like, what would allow me to be having a better time right now? That can be something too. I'm seeing Three of Swords and I'm seeing Ten of Cups, and that can immediately be like something that you're looking at and being like, I need to fix this in order to feel better about it. And what that can also mean too is that like maybe you had an idea for something, or like a fantasy for something. Having Three of Swords can be like, that's not really the way that this is going right now. And I had this like very specific image in my head about how this was going to be and what I wanted and how I wanted things to go. And I need to take care of that because this is not aligning with what I wanted that to be. So yeah, it can be a time that feels powerful because you can be seeing where you're not and also where you want to be, and how something is like mismatched a bit within the energy here. So it can be something that you look at and decide that you're going to do something about it, because the way that it is when you're looking at it, it's just feeling off to you. But I also see having Ten of Cups there, I think there's still an idealism here that is not totally lost, where you can have hope for what it is that you believe in and feel like that's possible. So even though you can have stuff going on where you're like, well, this needs to be addressed in order for that to actually happen, so I'm not totally there right now, I think that you still do have like a very clear image in your head of how you want things to be. And I think that's really starting somewhere with a process like this. That can also mean that there's mending that's happening too. So yeah, this can be like something going on where as far as what you really want for yourself right now, I think you're just seeing where there's an aspect of your reality that can just feel kind of broken. And when I say broken, I mean like for your specific vision of what you want for yourself right now and what you believe is going to be like the answer for you in a lot of ways, especially what you're going to feel happy with at the end of the day, what's going to work for you, what's going to feel right for you, like what you really actually genuinely feel like you want, that you'll be like happy with that image once it's realized. Having Three of Swords can be the ways that we feel kind of like let down by life or with situations, or like I had high hopes for this and now something else is going on. But because you already have a blueprint that I think is connected with the Ten of Cups, where you know what you want it to look like, even though it may not totally be aligning with that right now, or you could have had something maybe recently that happened where you're like, this is actually the opposite of what I want. At the same time, this feels like all you have to do is mend this. Like all this has to all that has to be done here is be fixed. So I'm not so much seeing you have to figure something out. This isn't like I have to figure out what I want because I have no clue. Having that Ten of Cups there feels like you have actually a pretty strong vision for what it is that you want. And I think that even though you're not totally there, it's really important that you have that. That's like a very, very key piece of this process. And I think it's important to acknowledge that, because it's just about closing that gap now at this point. And having Temperance here can be the patience to actually do this properly so you can feel the way that you want to feel and have the experience that you want to be having. So yeah, the stuff that you feel like isn't allowing you to have that type of experience can be something that you're deciding to tackle right now. But it's something that's going to take some time to do, and you can be aware of that. So it requires endurance, and it requires grit, and it requires patience, and it requires this kind of like constantly working at this if you're going to make this happen. Like a willingness to stick with it overall and to do your part here. Yeah, I will say the way that this energy is coming through feels like stuff that was out of your hands, stuff that's been outside of your control, where that was the circumstance, but it didn't really feel like you had much to do with it. It feels more so like this isn't a time where I'm seeing like you did something within the energy and you're like, I regret doing that, or like that was a mistake, or I'm the one that hurt myself here. I'm seeing more so like environmental things that you can be like, I wanted something else to be happening there, but this wasn't really something that I had control over. I think sometimes we can also feel a little bit helpless over things too when we are in a circumstance like that, because we are constantly co-creating with our environment. So it's not all up to us. And I think that when that sets in, especially when something isn't going the way that we want, sometimes it can feel difficult to kind of move forward and be like, is anything worth the effort at all if I don't have full total control over things? And I think having to look at yourself doing that, having to kind of like pick yourself back up after you go through something where you kind of feel like it's the last straw for you, but then it's like, are you going to stop living your life, or are we going to proceed and continue? But then that also means we have to process things and deal with painful emotions that can feel really unpleasant, especially, you know, with Ten of Cups, we can get our hopes up, and we can be very, very idealistic within the energy. And I think when things don't live up to that expectation, we can get like a little bit shut down because of it, maybe a lot shut down because of it. But I think it only comes from a place of being like, I feel like I can't deal with this. I feel like I can't handle all the stuff that I'm feeling, and then it just makes me want to kind of like give up and quit trying because this feels like too much. I feel like I can't go through that. I can't process that. I can't deal with like feeling everything that I'm feeling right now. So I think that's also something that takes time too. Like, how do you recover from really deep, painful disappointment? How do you face feelings that are so sad? And how do you let yourself dream again after you go through something difficult that didn't materialize in the way that you wanted it to? How do you not just like give up on the rest of your life? I feel like this is turning like really intense really quickly, but I think at the same time, when you go through repeated disappointments and like heartbreak and challenging situations, it can wear on you. And I think being in a process like this, it can be a lot of hard stuff that you're trying to work through right now, but it's something that it doesn't happen overnight. You can be some days willing to face it, other days having a really hard time with it, other days wanting to turn everything off completely to not have to like think about this or feel any of this. And then you get to a place of, I think like wanting things to change, wondering if that's possible, knowing that you have to face things that it can feel like really painful, I think, to be present to overall, and having to convince yourself that this is something that you're capable of feeling and moving through. But yeah, I think when you go through something and you feel like it puts you in really bad shape, it can be very difficult to convince ourselves to come back around after we feel like we've been burnt so badly. Because I think like what you hope for and what you can even see as possible, because Aquarius is such a futuristic sign, it is connected with ideals. I think much like the way that Pisces is, where it's like I can see a better future and I can see the potential. When you have that and situations are not living up to that perspective, but you're like, I know that this is possible, but then something else is manifesting, I think that can be really, really difficult to, can be like such a jagged pill to swallow within the energy. And even though you can, even though this can be teaching you how to listen more deeply and tune in more deeply, I think that there can be a feeling of pain when that's happening too, which I think can like feel kind of discouraging. Not that that's all there is, because there's more to it than that, but I think like big on this part here, it can feel just challenging to be in this sort of spot within the energy, even though we want to get out on the other side of it, and the only way to do that is to really like feel this thoroughly so we can move through, let go, and like carry on with the rest of our lives. There can also be stuff here where it's like I feel maybe like there's more that I need to listen to and maybe more that I need to understand, because we have a Queen of Swords here, and Queen of Swords energy always gives this, it reminds me of Shravana Nakshatra, which is about listening and tuning in and being quiet and really taking things in. When we have the energy of the Queen of Swords out, especially when we have Temperance here, it is about quieting. It's not about taking action. It's about observing everything that we have going on in our environment, because there are things that we need to understand that we don't have there yet. So yeah, maybe that's a key piece of this energy, having this here. As much as you may be like, I'm tired of thinking about this and I just like want things to move on, having Queen of Swords can be a part of you that begs to differ, where like there can be a part of you emotionally that's like, I don't want to have to feel this anymore, I don't want to think about this anymore, I do want to move on from this. But there's this other part of you, this like analytical part of you, that doesn't feel like it's done processing. So it's this part of you that's kind of holding you back after class here, being like, there's more that we need to understand about this. But I think there's another part of you that's kind of like fighting with the energy, being like, I don't want to think about this anymore, I don't want to do this anymore, I just want like to go to the next episode. But this part of you is like, no, we need to be here because you missed that conversation that was really important, and I really need you to listen to this. And I think that what it's about is about like what you actually want. And this can also be about like, for some of you, you can be finding yourself in situations with other people where you're trying to like mold the situation to what you want it to be, or like mold other people to what you want them to be, instead of choosing situations that are actually aligned with what you want. And that can be why you keep getting disappointed. So that can be something as well, where you're like, why is this happening? Especially if this is something like somewhat repeatedly that you've been experiencing, or you have a really big experience that feels very impactful. What this is meaning to tell you is 10 of Cups is going to be that ideal standard for you. The 5 of Cups can be situations that aren't living up to it, and there can be something about like, am I missing something? Are you possibly connecting with things that are not going to be compatible with this vision? And then when it's not compatible with the vision, there's that feeling of upset with these things. And you're like, how did this happen? I thought that I was going to be happy with this. When whole time, if you really looked at it, you'd realize that it was like never going to be this ideal for you. But when we want something to be so badly, even if that's not the nature of it, we can convince ourselves that it's going to, only to be disappointed at the end of the day. And this part of you that's like, I don't want you to have to go through that again, is like, we need to pay attention here so this doesn't happen again. But I think there's a part of you that just wants to escape feeling the way that you're feeling, because it just hurts to be feeling that right now. But it holds the key, it holds the answer within it. So it's important. Because I think what this is going to tell you is that, like, not every opportunity is equal. Not every opportunity is the same. You can have 5 different people or situations in front of you. Maybe none of them are going to be what you're looking for. Maybe one of them is going to be what you're looking for. Are you like choosing those things that are going to align? Or are you just like choosing whatever and then hoping that it's the right thing, and then you're in this situation again because you weren't really listening to what it was? Because we can't shape everything to our will. And we can see the potential in lots of things, but are we really listening when we're like telling ourselves that and making those assessments? So that can be something to hear. Like this is about your discernment. And it's about understanding that you do have a template for certain things that you want, and that not everything is going to align with that template that you have. Are you setting yourself up for disaster, setting yourself up to be disappointed because you're trying to fit situations or people, places, things, trying to make it fit a mold that's not the nature of it, and then so sad at the end of the day, and this part of you being like, I don't want to go through this again. So like, what do we need to understand about this? And I think overall that's what this is connected with. And this feels, for some reason, this 5 of Pentacles is feeling very worn down to me. Like this may actually be something that's been happening repeatedly. And it feels like because the keynotes of this situation have maybe not been fully being listened to. It can be one of those situations, let's just say it has to do with a relationship. You meet somebody, you're not tuning in all the way and listening to the way that they're showing up. Your eyes are kind of like glazing over, thinking about what you want and like the ideal of how you want certain things to be. Then you get a little while in, only to find that they are not matching up with what you're going to feel happy with at the end of the day. Like they don't really like hold a candle to this standard that you have. You're feeling sad, then you're like, I don't want to feel sad anymore, so let me like bounce to the next person, place, thing, situation. And then it's like rinse and repeat again and again and again. And it can be something with that 5 of Pentacles where you feel worn down, and then you're like, what I want, I don't even think that it's possible. And it's like, it's not that it's not possible. You may just be like picking the wrong pieces. And having Queen of Swords is the part of you, like having 3 of Swords above Queen of Swords can be an issue with your discernment that needs to be healed. And it can be because our idealism, 10 of Cups, can get in the way of our discernment because we want something to be so badly that we don't want to listen to what it actually is. So this is something having to do with your listening and your discernment here of things, and knowing the difference between the reality of what something is, because things are always communicating with us. But I think when all we can see is what we want, we're not always hearing that. So this is something that needs to be mended. And it's a listening that needs to be mended. This has to do with the throat chakra. And also too, having the sign of Sagittarius here, it can be about, as this part of your throat chakra is healing, it's also going to help you see the trajectory of things and whether or not, like basically what's going to end up happening, and if that's a situation you're going to feel happy with, or if that's something that you're going to feel let down. And then it can stop you in your tracks and be like, I'm not going to pursue this any further because I know where this is going to lead, and before I have to get to that point, I'll just cut it off now, or stop now, or change directions now. or invest in something else now, instead of having to play the tape all the way to the end through my experience and land back here again, and then I'm gonna have to heal from this. And I think once we have that understanding under our belts, it can make us more confident moving forward, because we're not scared that the same thing is going to repeat, because we understand why things happened in the way that they did. So we can get up and we can dust ourselves off, and we can feel more confident about the future that we're connecting with, not feeling like this is going to happen again and like this is just our fate, when really it's coming from a place of ignorance. And if we're just tuning in and listening more, this isn't something that's going to repeat. Like, you're not fated to like have this be the story over and over again for the rest of your life, but we are going to have to listen. And coming back to this thing about the like rinse and repeat in this situation, when we do not take the time to make sense of the experience that we have, because we don't want to deal with the difficult emotions and we just want to hop to the next situation, it's just going to be, for the most part, very likely a repeat of what we experienced before, because we're not taking the time to learn. Because we learn more than just in the actual experience if we are not totally like saturated in the understanding that comes along with it, and like symbolically even what that is expressing to us. So if we're like running through these cycles, keeping our ears covered and keeping our eyes closed, and then being like, why does this keep happening? You know, it starts to make sense once you start listening and be like, I see how I was doing that, and I remember like witnessing this, but then being like, well, I don't want it to be like that, so I'm just going to sweep that under the rug, and like that piece was telling me that it was going to lead exactly here. So I think there's just like stuff about following that trail, so you can pick up on this before you have to have this experience once again. And to also not misconstrue this and think like you're just not going to be able to be happy, or like everybody's going to let you down. Like, that's definitely not the case. I think it has to do with like what's being unconsciously chosen, and turning this into a conscious choice rather than an unconscious one, and then like calling it fate, when that's not really what this is. But we are going to have to feel things fully. And I think that's actually the most difficult part about all of this. Because like, it doesn't feel good, you know, so we don't really want to. But the prize that you get from this is like learning from it and not having to experience this again. So you get like a very amazing reward from feeling all of this fully, letting yourself feel how absolutely terrible this feels, enough to be like, I never want to have to experience this again. How do I make sure that happens? I have to learn from this situation. Then that means I have to feel everything to understand it. But when we're not letting ourselves fully feel things and just hopping into the next situation, it's just like constantly running. And our choices, again, they don't really feel conscious. It feels more unconscious. This like programming that's playing out. So yeah, even though it's really difficult to sit there and feel all of this, it's really necessary so you don't set yourself up for this again unknowingly, because we don't do this to ourselves on purpose. Absolutely not something like this. But I do think that there's maybe a part of you that when you run into a situation like this, having Five of Pentacles looking at Five of Cups can be this feeling of like, I can't handle feeling everything that I feel about this situation. And even though you can, there can be some beliefs that are like, let's do anything except like feel this fully. Or let me even say like, I'm done healing from this and hop to the next situation, only to still be karmically carrying that with you because it's still unprocessed actually. And this is going to help you like heal this wound actually, like once and for all. So this is something that can be mended. This is not something you have to carry with you and you're just like marked for life. It's not that way at all, but it's gonna have to be addressed if that's the case, you know, and we have to feel that in order to do it. Something that these situations that you've been in, that it feels important to jot down and take note of, is what feels so disappointing about these situations that you found yourself in, and understanding that what's in between, it's like the gap. It's telling you about the gap between what you want and what's happening, which will inform you more about like this blueprint of what it is that you want. So yeah, that part is really important, because you can be like, I have no preferences, I'm fine with whatever. And it's like, why do you feel so sad then? Why are you feeling kind of hopeless then? Why are you feeling disconnected? So it's meant to tell you that you actually do have standards here, and you actually do have ideals here, and you do have things that you want, and you do have things that resonate with you, and this situation doesn't happen to be doing that, and it's informing you of what you actually do want, and that's really important. So it's giving you that information so you can know that for yourself. It's telling you that there's a difference between what's happening and what you actually want. And the more clear we get on what we want, the more you're going to easily be able to see when you start getting involved in a situation and it is not that for you, without having to get this far down the timeline of that situation. But when we don't let ourselves like feel that fully, we don't, it's kind of like it's like having this picture, having this like blank piece of paper, and there's something underneath it. Like, you know, when you do, I forget the word for it, but it's like if you take a blank piece of paper and you put it over top of something that has like ridges or indentations, and you start like coloring it, it'll basically like transfer what's behind it. There's a word for it. It's like when you go to, I wonder if this is like common knowledge. It's like how you can go to a grave site and like on a headstone, if you put a piece of paper on it and you'll like color it with a crayon, like the like longer side of it, it'll like transfer what's on the headstone. This is such a like weird reference to be making, but then it shows you what's underneath. So you basically get to pick up on what's behind it. It's kind of like that. As you go through these experiences, there's like this invisible writing behind what it is that you're going through. And when you go through these experiences, it's like the crayon on the paper that's gonna like show you the whole blueprint of what's behind this, when before it just seems blank. So it's giving you like all this context for basically your inner blueprint. But if you're not taking the time to see what it is trying to communicate with you, it's something where you're not going to understand what's really behind it, and then we're just going to keep repeating these situations, being like, why am I not happy, and like not getting it. So that's why Queen of Swords is here, saying like we need to listen in order to understand. So it's like less doing and more sitting with this and paying attention, because that's when you're going to have your eureka moment here with all of this. But I think sitting with it just feels so uncomfortable and so unpleasant, and it's like, let's just get to the fun stuff now. So yeah, I think that it's like also about that like emotional and cognitive discipline of being introspective about this experience, even though it can feel really unpleasant to be introspective, to be thinking about something like this that we feel sad about. And there's always that element when we have Five of Cups of that little part of us that like doesn't even want to admit that this is the reality, which makes it more difficult to process, because if you're not working with reality, you're not going to gain information from something, because we're just too busy pushing everything away. Pushing the pain away, pushing the feeling away, because we don't want to accept that that's what it is. But then you can't really work with that. All right, we're going to leave the reading here. I would like to thank everyone for connecting and tuning in. I'm sending everybody love, and I hope to catch you guys next time.